On tonight's edition of the CHGO Cubs Related podcast, Cactus League play is underway. We'll talk about everything going on with the Cubs. We'll take a look at Matthew Boyd after his start on Thursday as he heads to the World Baseball Classic, and we'll be joined by Jared Wyllys live from Mesa later in the show on tonight's edition of the CHGO Cubs Related podcast. This is the CHGO Cubs Related podcast. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan. We are coming to you live here on Thursday, February 26th. And, Brendan, February, a slightly shorter month, but technically speaking, month away.
Month away, Corey. We're scoring runs now in spring training games. Looking good. Jefferson Rojas hit a home run. We have Matthew Boyd giving us quotes. Jared Wyllys will be with us, as you said, to talk about that later on in the show. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling optimistic. I'm getting cool videos from our friends in Mesa. This, to me, still best time of the year.
I've already put in my PTO for opening day against the Nationals. So getting my ducks in a row, now that it's close enough, it feels reasonable to be forecasting that stuff.
Will you bring a blanket to Wrigley? Are you a blanket to Wrigley type person? Or are you just?
I am a chronic. I always get it wrong. So whatever the situation, I could wear 7 layers and hoodies and feel like, this has to be enough. I'll definitely be warm. I will not. I'm always 1 layer short or 1 layer too much.
Now, will the John Lester jersey be over the hoodie?
Depends on the mood. On opening day. Yeah, we'll see. That's the only one that I have that has the World Series patch. So usually that's what I go with.
The Cubs World Series?
Yeah, they won the World Series in 2016.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. People forget that. Yep.
They're celebrating that later this summer.
Oh, the 10-year anniversary, right?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
God. When they won the World Series.
All right, anyway. On tonight's episode, like I said in the intro, we will be joined by Jared Wyllys about halfway through the show. He is live in Mesa. Give us the pulse, talk about a nice start from Matthew Boyd that we saw on Thursday, 3 scoreless innings from Matthew Boyd with a few strikeouts. So I know he talked to the media, so looking forward to hearing from Jared on all of that. We will talk on this episode. We got a couple injuries on the, peripheral side of the roster, but they still do have some implications with things going forward. And we'll just take a look at, what's been going on now that the Cubs have started games. When we spoke with you last, they were getting ready to start spring training games. And now they've actually been playing those games, Brendan. So there's, in some form or fashion, baseball sometimes available on your TV.
Don't even get me started on
I know
that.
some
this is a
people are not
positive
pleased about
podcast.
that. Yeah. So.
Well, we're seeing, I think, the most encouraging start to a spring from the pitching perspective. We'll get into it on the specific details, but generally, most of them are throwing faster, Corey. 1 to 2 miles per hour faster. Shota, faster. Cade Horton sitting 95, 96. Some said he was throwing 98 during the non-game action. Yeah. So, maybe we'll see crazy numbers.
Let me ask you straight away, Mr. Arizona here. Hot guns? Do we trust the guns? How do we feel about that?
I don't know. They're changing the technology all the time.
Yeah.
If TrackMan's saying 98, I'm thinking it's 98. They got iPads set up all over the place. So I do genuinely trust it when it's on a multiple day span across multiple different fields and venues and tech. So that is the case. I think you do have to trust it.
Yeah, I mean, really, I just ask, especially on Shota, is because, he was sitting, or at least touching 93 the other day in his start. The reason I ask about the gun is because that was a huge point of concern when he was coming back from his injury. So if we're seeing that, everyone's going to be like, woo, okay, but,
Well, I mean, Crook Counsell didn't give a sigh of relief, but it sure looked like it was when he was talking
Yeah,
about
hey, look,
Shota.
like, you'll take it over the alternative, hot gun or not.
Right. I mean, Crook Counsell did point out the velocity for Shota, saying it's a good sign, talking about the health beyond him, a few mechanical things that they got figured out. So I think it is a good sign. I think it's more likely that the
Yeah.
gun was not hot.
Yeah, just worth asking, and
Yeah.
really, it also is one of those things where when it fits our narrative,
I'm
uh,
running with it.
the guns are perfect. What does it matter that it's spring training? He's
That's
touching
right.
93, great.
That's right.
And, if this was something bad, these guns don't matter. These spring training games are completely fake.
No, I mean, James Taillon's velocity decrease doesn't actually, it's actually fake. It was too cloudy
Yeah.
that day.
Yeah, completely made up. But
Made up.
yeah, I mean, I do think, one of the storylines we were looking at coming in, even just vaguely on Shota, was his health, how he was feeling, how he was looking. So even if that is just one indication, so early into spring, it's what you want to see. It was
Yeah.
obviously a big issue for him in that second half, dealing with the injury and the mechanical changes that it brought about as he was trying to kind of compensate from that. And then, of course, the decisions to start him, not to start him in the playoffs, and much was made about the qualifying offer decision. So certainly that's one of the things you want to see. Nothing replicates getting in there against MLB hitters at Wrigley Field and going through the motions of the season. But for what felt like a somewhat of an unknown, just how it would kind of carry over into this year, the early return is at least what you'd want to see.
Yeah, I think so. And for the most part, the pitchers seem healthy. Jordan Wicks did unfortunately go down with an elbow issue. Doesn't sound serious. It sounded as if maybe it could even be just a 1 week to 2 week scenario. We'll see with that. The pitching overall is healthy. The positional side, we did see Tyler Austin get knee surgery, a cleanup. It could be months. Maybe it's 2 months. Maybe it's 4 months. I'm not sure they are even aware of that yet. And they'll see how that goes. But no significant injuries so far. So everyone's healthy. Everyone's throwing faster. Everyone's looking good. They got Nico Horner doing videos in the backfield, which is just phenomenal content. Great start to the spring.
They did two videos, one with Nico narrating Ian Happ working out, and then vice versa.
Oh, did they do Ian Happ? I didn't see the Nico narration part.
Yeah, the response
Yeah.
basically.
Oh, I didn't see
Yes.
that part.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Oh, I
if
gotta
you're a
see that
fan
part.
of Cubs Productions and the Cubs social marketing content,
Which they do fantastic
which
work.
they do an excellent
Yeah.
job. Yes, those videos are on social. It's just the two of them narrating what each other are doing, but they are very funny.
No, I did learn
Um,
something from that. So,
okay, do
so
tell.
this is what I learned. Nico was talking about how he gets used to running just left, like he runs in left circles nonstop. And he was thinking, oh, I don't really run to the right, like doing right circles. So if you look in that video, he's doing right circles. I'm like, oh, he's actually doing it. He was just talking about this. So you see him running full sprints, like doing the reverse around the bases. I'm like, oh, he's actually doing it. So you do learn something in those videos.
There you go, a hidden gem of wisdom
That's
in
right.
the fun social
That's
videos.
right.
But let's start first, Brendan. I mean, let's just some housekeeping stuff, because you mentioned the Tyler Austin thing. Again, out potentially months. With the knee cleanup, and then Jonathan Long injured in Saturday's game. Sustained a sprained left elbow in the game against the Rangers.
That looked a lot worse than what it ended up being.
But he
Yeah.
is going to skip the World Baseball Classic, which he was looking forward to going. And really, I think the thing to just address on that is both, these are both guys who represented potential depth on this Cubs bench. And I think, especially as it relates to any potential backup or kind of fill in with Michael Busch at first base. And so curious, initially, obviously, Austin wasn't the type of signing where it was going to have major implications. This was a guy that you were bringing back from overseas to kind of see if he could, tap into some of his power and, bring it all together, especially in platoon splits at the MLB level. But it does, potentially throw some of that that bench depth into flux a little bit and beg the question. Like we've heard from Craig Counsell, especially on Michael Busch, that the plan is to not treat him so strictly as a platoon guy, and give him those opportunities against both sides of pitching to really grow and learn how to better hit against left-handed pitching. But these were two guys who would have figured to get some of those opportunities at first base, even if it was just giving Michael Busch a day off.
Yeah, I would say it's actually disappointing. I know he only got $1 million. The expectations may not be quite high, but I was personally interested in seeing how the transition back to the U.S. from Japan would go. Former top prospect, mid-30s. We know the pop. We know the swing decisions. I was interested in following that storyline. So from that perspective, it's disappointing. From the actual expectation of value, because the contract is just north of 1 million, it's hidden, not hidden, but it's written in what the projections are for him, which is someone who's not likely to produce. So when you take a step back, I don't think it's a big deal. Yeah, they're going to have to figure out first base depth. Maybe Moises plays more there. Hell, maybe we even see someone we're not even thinking about get those reps there. My expectation is Johnny Long comes back healthy in a couple weeks, maybe sooner than that. He gets an opportunity there, which I'm excited to see. We'll figure it out. Maybe they even sign someone else that we're not even talking about right now. I know our good friend Greg Huss in the chat over here is talking about Garrett Cooper and Dom Smith. I got to tell you, my brain at first was like, oh, I wonder how they're doing. That's how sick I am, even though it's a joke right there. So, but in that light, maybe they do go out and look for a veteran on a minor league deal just to have depth pieces.
I the first thing I have to respond with is that I didn't know. I mean, you're very Johnny Long. I didn't know that you were at that level.
I'm like pretty sure they refer to him as Johnny every now and then. Greg, if you're still in the chat, you got to back me up on this. Don't they talk to him as
well? Greg
Johnny
Huss
Long?
is a wonderful and dedicated prospect writer and podcaster.
I'm on his podcast all the time.
You had such a familiar relationship.
I'm on the pod all the time. I'm basically a podcast prospect person.
Right. So
he's got to back me up on this.
Bruce Levine did tweet earlier this morning that Miguel Amaya has been taking some infield at first base. So yeah, I do think it is
Owen Miller too, perhaps, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you give guys reps. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Mo get some opportunity there. Honestly, dude, like if they felt like seeing how it would go, like throw Matt Shaw at first base if you need a place for him to play.
He's too short for that. I'm sorry. He's too short for that.
He can jump
I like
high.
Shaw, but he's too athletic and short for that.
I know. I really only say that to illustrate that, you obviously had somewhat of a plan here. Again, the plan is to give Busch the runway. And I think there's a quote somewhere, where Craig Counsell's talking about him getting 600 plate appearances and really getting that opportunity to work through some of his struggles against left-handed pitching. But you try guys over there. I mean, ultimately, the defense has to be passable. You've spent a lot of money on a Gold Glove riddled infield. You can't have throws being dropped or outs not being converted. But you had some plans here, and you're going to have to work through these injuries. So,
did your guy Justin Turner sign yet? You're shaking your head. People listening can't see you. They think your audio is going out.
No, the dead air is fine. Everybody loves that. I don't know. I mean, that'll be the curious thing. It feels like with their dedication to Busch getting the runway and at least having some other options that you should be able to try over there if you need someone to spell Busch. I would be surprised if they went out and continued adding. But, we've seen them add to that depth level in the outfield. Guys on spring invites, minor league contracts with, options that kick in if they make the big league team. So maybe you see them explore that. It, depends on the severity of these injuries and maybe what that exact timeline is. But more than anything, I was just curious to see what Austin can do. This doesn't rule him out, but I was curious.
That's what I'm saying.
Of his
I'm
impact.
Disappointed because I was curious to see.
Yeah. So it's not some big death blow to the team. But when you're looking at like interesting storylines, maybe something clicks and you kind of unlock a helpful piece of this roster. You just have to wait a little longer to see if Austin gets that opportunity.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and take our first ad break here. Come back around. We got Jared Wyllys coming in a little bit. 1 second here. All right. My computer almost froze, but you know what? I'm a professional. First ad break here from Xfinity. Ever wish your Wi-Fi could just handle it like my computer right now? Every stream, every game, every device without slowing down or surprising you with a higher bill. With the Xfinity 5-year price guarantee, you get fast, reliable, intelligently optimized Wi-Fi that actually works together with your home, and your price stays the same for live 5 full years. We're talking Wi-Fi that can spot the issues before you even notice them, so you can stream the big game in 4K, hop on video calls, even do podcasts with Corey Freeman. No buffering, no guessing. Here's the best part that you'll really love. No annual contracts, no hidden fees. Xfinity's best equipment is already included because a lot can change in 5 years. Champions are crowned, records get broken, new dreams take shape, but your Wi-Fi should stay rock solid and your price should stay right where you locked in. Lock in your price right now. Unlock the possibilities with Xfinity. Learn more at xfinity.com. Xfinity, imagine that. Select plans only. Restrictions do apply. Okay, baseball season is right around the corner. There's only one place to catch every pitch, every homer, every extra inning thriller at Hooters. Step up to the plate at any of the 11 Chicagoland locations and make Hooters your game day headquarters. Cold drinks, legendary wings, wall-to-wall TVs, and the kind of atmosphere that turns every at-bat into a party. Watching from home, be the MVP of your lineup. Pre-order your wings now at order.hooters.com and bring the ballpark flavor straight to your couch. If you need a clutch refreshment, the drink of the month is Tito's Strawberry Lemonade, a home run blend of Tito's handmade vodka, lemonade, and strawberry puree for just $8 all month long. Round up your crew today. Cheer on the Cubs at your local Chicagoland Hooters, Aurora, Countryside, Downers Grove, Joliet, Lansing, and Melrose, all across Chicagoland. Check them out at originalhooters.com.
All right, Brennan, back with you here. And I want to segue there. And this is going to be our new segment, The Original Take, brought to you by Hooters. Cheer on your favorite teams from any of the 11 Chicagoland Hooters locations or check them out at originalhooters.com. I want to talk about Cade Horton. I know we're going to bring Jared on to talk about pitching in general, but, we saw Cade Horton's debut, and you were tweeting a glorious supercut of his changeup. I'm a changeup guy, so I appreciate that. I just want to hear you talk about Cade Horton, what you saw, what you liked, and yeah.
Yeah, with Cade, you're looking just for the sustainability of the second half performance. 1.03 ERA in that second half. He was one of the best pitchers in the league, if not the best in the National League, for a good multiple stretch performance there. Now, with Cade, you want to see the longevity. So you want to see 5, 6, 7 innings. You want to see the ability for the velocity to sustain itself early on here. But from what we're seeing so far, it sure as hell looks like he's looking exactly like that second half. So I'm not looking for different pitch types. I'm not looking for evolving different pitch types. He showed enough last year with the sinker, with the changeup, with the four-seamer, with the sweeper, sprinkling in a curveball every now and then to give me confidence that that is a sustainable, deep repertoire. I am simply looking for velocity holding up, which it did. I'm looking for good quotes from Cade, which we're getting. I'm looking for confidence and just a repeat of that second half.
Yeah, so it was certainly a good start. 2 innings, no hits, no runs, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts. Yeah, just about keeping these guys healthy. But, certainly I'm excited for his season. I think, we all are, but just excited to see him unleash it. And we talk about it a lot, but those guys that have that kind of tangible hunger, that attitude.
I mean, dude,
even watching the spring training highlights or like the video that you cut up,
dude,
the way that he, leans over, like
stole it,
staring at the plate, just excellent from an aesthetic viewpoint, let alone when he's, putting up a historic second half.
The mound presence, the way he leans over on the mound, he's basically it looks like a lion about to catch like his prey. Like he's literally can't be leaned over anymore facing forward. He's striking guys out. I swear to God, I get Jake Arrieta flashbacks. The way he kind of picks up his sleeve doing this. I'm telling you, he just reminds me of one of those psycho pitchers. I was throwing this idea out to you. I was thinking crazy a couple of days ago, but I'm just going to let myself dream for a second. If Cade is that second half guy, which I believe we have every reason to believe he's a 3.5 ERA, if not better guy. Boyd looks healthy. Tyone looks a lot like we saw him that second half with that kick changeup. Justin Steele comes back healthy in the summer. We got Edward Cabrera taking that next step. We got Jackson Wiggins. I'm thinking crazy thoughts. I'm thinking this is a ceiling that I'm not familiar with from a pitching perspective since those mid 2010s, since we were going into 2016 with that bulldog workhorse rotation. This ceiling that we're currently seeing right now makes me think crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you were texting extremely
I
optimistic.
was in a good mood.
Shota's velo looked good the other day.
Yeah.
You were in a good place.
I was thinking really crazy thoughts because I mean that was my biggest concern from the entire rotation was just Shota, because you think of the age and you look at the reason why the velocity decreased. I'm thinking, is there an age-related decline in athleticism? Sometimes it happens. We saw the extension shorten up, the release point deviated, the velocity, of course, decreased, but the splitter also was out of whack. The velocity increased for Shota last year. The spin rate went up. It looked like he wasn't as athletic on the mound. So that was, I thought, a fair question. And from the first game, he kind of just pounced on that as being not the case.
Yeah, I mean, look, a few spring training games and starts and all that other stuff, a season does not make. But I know where you're coming from, and it's what we talked about, all of this offseason with this pitching group, like that you're maybe looking for that stability and trying to find those kind of sure bets. But in pitching especially, there often aren't many, especially with the way that the game has trended. And even just seeing those little encouraging things, the ceiling is there with this group. Can they put it together? Can they put it together at the right time? Can they put it together for a solid duration of time? That's what the 162 games plus hopefully the playoffs will reveal. But the ceiling is quite high for this group. And you kind of laid it out, and, we'll talk with Jared a little bit about this when he joins. Like, the hope springs eternal. So when you see these guys and they look healthy, Matthew Boyd looked good on Thursday, Shota's velo looking good, like, you do kind of start to think like, hey, you know what? Like, if the plan comes together, this is going to look mighty nice.
We talk a lot about the worst case scenarios. Naturally, as fans, you want to account for how you might be sad. At the same time, the variance goes in the other direction. It's not to say you dwell on the high ceiling and get yourself all worked up, but you have to at least acknowledge it. The acknowledgement is the Cubs are projected as a 92, 91, 90 win team, somewhere in that territory. The high win projection is driven by their positional units. Most of those projections, one standard deviation. The majority of teams missed their mark, their projection, by 7 wins. Okay. The way the Cubs missed their mark by 7 wins in the positive direction is out producing on the pitching side of things. The projections for the pitchers are not as rosy as that of the positional side. Makes sense. You have Ian Happ, Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson, Alex Bregman. You have a large sample size of precedence of above average offense. You do not have that for the pitchers. But at the same time, what you and I know from watching the team and all of our listeners is that the recent developments of, let's say, Tyone's kick changeup, Shota's return in velocity, Cade Horton's development of 2 new pitch types, the second half last year. The projections naturally don't weigh those because those are by definition outliers. Typically, you don't see pitchers evolve in the fashion the Cubs have evolved in a good way. That being said, if the Cubs do outperform their win projection, it has to come from those guys, right? If they hit the expected projections, it's because what we're talking about didn't happen. I am optimistic it does happen. I'm optimistic we're a 90-plus win team. I'm optimistic that the pitching side does provide more value than the projections, and I would bet more money and inching towards 95 and falling behind 90.
Hey, sounds good to me. Sign me up for that. I wanna ask you about. We talked about him a little bit, and I think we're gonna dive in, more to like Boyd and some of the frontline guys for now. When Jared joins after the second ad break here in a couple minutes, but want to just ask you, when you watch these games, I know we talk about kind of taking spring games with a grain of salt, and letting players work through stuff and understanding that it's not an immediate translation to once they are in the MLB season. How do you view an outing like the other day from someone like Jackson Wiggins, big time prospect? People are asking the question of, does he have a role on this team maybe later in the season? And, again, me, like I could generally care less about spring training, but big time prospect, inning and a third, 6 hits, 5 runs, does strike out 3. When you watch, I guess getting to the core of the question, when you watch a big time prospect and you're thinking long term and their ability, and when they come up and make their debut and all that other stuff, is there anything you're even looking for in these spring training starts?
The first thing I look for is body language. I want to see how they move off the mound, catching the ball, how they react to poor pitches. That was my first takeaway watching Cade. So I'm watching Cade when he comes up. I'm like, this guy is a psycho out there. That's the first thing. The second thing is I'm watching the deviation from where his pitch ends up versus where the catcher's locating. So I want to see how consistent he is locating. And then I can kind of just mentally do the math. I'm like, all right, well, he's hitting this spots. He's feeling himself. He looks good. The pitch types look good. Third thing is, what's the expectation in the pitch shape profiles? Is anything different? Is anything out of the norm? Any outlier type situations that we're seeing? And with Jackson Wiggins, we'll have Jared talk about this, but most of what we saw looked good. It resembled what we saw last year in the minors. Fourth is I want to hear what the coaches say about it, if they're exuding confidence. And it appears as if he is checking most of those boxes. But at the same time, it is one start. It's not the big league environment.
Sure. Yeah.
Things do change. And to draw big conclusions would either have to involve coaches talking about it, like in the way we talked about Brad Keller last year, or in the shapes of his pitches being so different that it deserves talking about it. And we're not really seeing that yet. So I'm going to reserve those opinions until we see him in big league action.
Cool. Sounds good. Last thing before our break here, I do see it from our guy Craig in the YouTube chat. Ben Brown might pitch some meaningful innings this season. One of the more confounding players, I think, in recent memory. Someone who, you can obviously see the potential and the stuff at times is really there. But other times the command and the ability to keep the ball in the ballpark is not. So far on the spring, I think a couple of outings, 2 innings pitched, just 1 outing, 2 innings pitched, 2 hits, no walks, 3 strikeouts. And I did like, Brendan, I think in the past, you've not been a fan. I think he admitted to getting a little too jacked up or not being ready for the moment in some of those big games, I think in Milwaukee in particular. And he, kind of owned that this spring training, coming in and saying I need to have a better attitude about stuff, be more confident about stuff, not let those games get to me. And, kind of alluding to not being as productive as he wanted to be. So the mentality seems to be there. It'll be interesting to see what the Cubs decide to do, keep him stretched out. We've talked about, his potential as someone dialing it up in, short relief, et cetera. I don't know. I don't know if I would say I'm a believer in him as a holistic phrase, but I remain intrigued by the idea of what he could do as a reliever, really dialing in some of those pitches and how exactly he was attacking hitters. So there is belief there for me in what he can do, at least to contribute to this team.
The destination involves many roads. So there is a Ben Brown road to arriving at the destination of pitching value. Now that road got a little bit wider because he added a sinker. He discussed more confidence in the changeup. So for Ben Brown, I'm looking at those two pitch types. He did show a few sinkers in his recent outing. The shapes looked interesting. Had about 10 inches of run on that pitch. So we'll see more of it, right? But he is one of those roads. It doesn't mean the road is wide open and there's no obstacles, but there is a road there for value for Ben Brown. Let's take our ad break. We'll introduce Jared in, and then we'll continue more spring discussion. All right. When game day stopped by the office, the biggest thing that stood out to me was how simple their whole process was. Quick, comfortable, completely personalized. You're in, you're out in about an hour. It's real care from a local family-owned clinic that actually listens to your goals. For me, this health journey is about one thing: energy. Energy to be more active and anything to just feel better, more focus, more motivation in the day-to-day. If you're feeling that drop, low energy, less drive, the scale creeping up, hair thinning, muscles getting tight, it could be low testosterone. It's common as we get older, but it's almost something you can not ignore, and you can take control of. Whether your goal is peak performance, weight loss, hair restoration, or just becoming a better father, husband, and man, Game Day builds a plan around you, and you can start at almost any age, late 20s and up. Start your best life with Game Day Men's Health. Check out their locations in Skokie, Naperville, Libertyville, and more. Scan the QR code here or visit GameDayCHGO.com to find the clinic closest to you. New vehicles are in stock at Ray Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and this is your chance to score during the big auto show sales event. Head to Ray CDJR today on Route 12 in Fox Lake and shop one of the largest inventories in the Chicago area with a huge selection of new Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram models ready to go. Right now, take advantage of 0% financing for 72 months on select new vehicles. And if you're looking for value, they got over 125 vehicles priced under $20,000. From the moment you walk in, their team of brand experts is there to guide you every step of the way, making the process simple, transparent, and actually enjoyable. So if you're ready for a new ride, do not miss the auto show sales event going on right now. Visit Ray Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram on Route 12 in Fox Lake, or shop online at raycdjr.com, serving the community since 1963 and the only dealership we recommend.
All right, Brendan, with that, I am hoping we will be joined by Jared Wyllys here in a second. There he is.
Look at that guy.
Mesa.
Look at that beard. You know,
our longest tenured guest, even
That's
pre
right.
CHGO.
10 years.
So certainly putting up more numbers than anybody else, and we're happy to have Jared join us. How is the desert air treating you, Jared?
It's been good to me so far. It's been a really nice reprieve from Chicago. I left 20-something degrees, frost all over my car, and I felt hot today for the first time in months. And so that by itself is just glorious.
Well, I can't relate, but you left me behind here in Chicago. But we want to talk pitching, want to talk Matthew Boyd. I know you were there for that today, but where I want to start is just a general question. You know, I know you haven't been out there for long, but I know hope springs eternal. I remember we interviewed Len Casper a long time ago, and he spoke about that and kind of like, look, every team thinks they're better this year and whatever. But you've been around this team for a long time. You've been around a lot of these players in particular going into years where they might have talked like their expectations were decent, but that was not the case, right? We all know that was not the case. Even just being there shortly, Alex Bregman's here, coming off a year where they got back to the playoffs, overcame a few hurdles, but ultimately fell short. We're kind of reading about that hunger and, sort of a renewed spirit and what Alex Bregman's bringing. Do you feel that at all when you've gotten there and been around these guys even briefly?
Yeah, I mean, I'll use a quick example from today that kind of illustrates that. So, after Matt Boyd pitched, then we go and talk to him almost immediately after he leaves the mound. Spring training's kind of funny that way. And I asked him a question about just like, the experience of he's preparing for the WBC, but it's also very early in spring training. And is there a different feel to the work that he's doing, knowing that in, a matter of days, in a week or so, he's going to be pitching in a much more high stakes environment? And his answer was basically like, I'm going out there to compete no matter what the situation is. And so whether it's a spring training start that I think, as we all know, I've said it before to other people, like sometimes you take that box score and just throw it out the window because there's so many different things going on in a game like that. But a lot of it was just like his attitude as he was talking to me about a spring training start against the Angels in February. And we saw some of the results today. I mean, the way he looked was very encouraging. And so, I see that. And of course, we all read the Pickrell Armstrong quotes from that article. It's really hard to look at things like that and not sense there's a difference in this clubhouse, because I was here at around this same time a year ago, and I didn't really get a sense then in the same way that I do now. You do feel a difference. It's a hard thing to like define or measure necessarily, but you do get a feeling sometimes when you talk to guys. You see the look in their eye, the way that they respond to certain kinds of questions, like Boyd did today. I think those are all signs that point to a team that's been, in a way, kind of galvanized by the success of last season, but then ultimately the disappointment in when and how it ended, when it very much looked like they had a real shot of at least getting to the NLCS, but coming up just a little bit short.
So we always talk about the Cubs being a professional roster. They're very mature in their process. They're very process-oriented guys. I want to learn about like your process. So when you go and interview these guys, especially in Mesa, right when you walk up to them, can you get a sense of like the mood they're in? Can you kind of like sense that and how things have gone? And with Matthew Boyd, what I'm curious about, because he is starting the WBC soon, is there any difference from your perspective and how he's talking about ramp up, how he's talking about, his performances, that you can differentiate, let's say last April, last May versus, or even spring versus now?
Yeah, I think with him in particular, I talked to him in the clubhouse last year at around this time. And at that point, his attitude was very much like, he was just kind of excited to be there, happy to be a part of the team. And then now, a year later, there's an intensity to him in late February that I don't want people to get the wrong idea, but like that wasn't necessarily there last year. And I'm not saying that in a way like that he wasn't taking what he was doing seriously or wasn't like driven to succeed. I don't want anybody to.
But it has to be some like comfort and familiarity with the environment too, right? So now like you're not trying to feel out. You kind of who you are, and you can kind of express yourself and not be on edge, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think that's some of where it's coming from. Is he's comfortable now, but there absolutely was there was an intensity to him today that just I don't recall experiencing a year ago. And I think a lot of that does come from, there's a little bit of a shift in that clubhouse, like I said earlier. But, usually this time of year when it's spring training, it's more relaxed. Like these guys are, especially early in spring training, they're still kind of getting themselves back into the routine, back into the rhythm. And so a lot of times when you talk to guys this time of year, there's just not the same tenor to their responses or to their attitudes as you're going to see like in July, August, September, or something like that. So a lot of times in Mesa, it's just sort of, I don't know, relaxed is the best word I can think of.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of a tinge of a difference there. I'll say this, like, I walked in there today, and so I'll be back in tomorrow and the next few days after that and get a chance to talk to even more guys. But I am getting sort of a almost palpable sense that there's a difference in that clubhouse.
Yeah, I mean, I asked, I maybe like willing it to be, but it is an interesting, especially as you bring up like, last year and ramping up for the WBC, there are like feels like there's a few like converging things that, you know, are going to contribute to that. Like you have guys preparing for the WBC that we know can be a very like charged environment, guys very prideful, representing their country. And we've seen those games, like the energy and the enthusiasm in the few tournaments we've seen pretty high. When you see that you have some guys coming into contract years. And then, you know, we even talked about it when the offseason was getting going. Like, it's hard to measure how you would see this, but you would think that falling behind in the division and then getting knocked out by your division rival would, you know, ramp up this sort of like, all right, you know, we're having fun and we feel like we're going to be a good team, but there is serious business to be taken care of here. And so like, it does feel like, just from an outside fan's perspective, all of that coming together, especially when you throw in another baseball rat, as Brendan always likes to say, in Alex Bregman, I'm not surprised to hear that answer from you. I guess it's a long-winded way of saying like it tracks with kind of just what's going on in their schedule, their careers, and where this team is at. It feels like a perfect storm for some of that stuff, for this to kind of be a season where, you know, they're celebrating 150 years, they're celebrating the 2016 team, but a good portion of this group is possibly unsure where they're playing next year, and they've got some unfinished business. So I'm glad to hear it, and I'm not surprised to hear it as well.
Yeah, and I think, you know, to your point about Bregman, I think there's a significant difference in the intangibles as far as what a guy like Bregman brings to your clubhouse compared to a guy like Kyle Tucker last year. Kyle Tucker, loaded with talent, very much carried the team in the first half. Injuries hampered him in the second half. I think results would be a lot different if he was healthy. But the way that the other guys have responded to Bregman is something that I did not see with Kyle Tucker a year ago. There is a almost tangible difference. And so Bregman, I think there's not that these guys need it, but like a level of veteran leadership that, you know, Kyle Tucker, just because of his personality, the way he's wired, he just isn't that guy. But Bregman very much is. And so I think you're going to see a difference in like maybe their offensive production is more or less the same between the two of them. But I think the big difference you're going to see is what Bregman does for that clubhouse. And again, a clubhouse that's already absolutely stacked with veterans, absolutely stacked with guys that are baseball rats, and you throw somebody like Bregman into that mix. I think it's just that's something to watch this season for sure.
Yeah, I was listening. I mean, Pete Crow Armstrong's been doing a media blitz, I feel like, for the past week and a half. So he's been on podcasts, been on basketball.
Has he said anything noteworthy?
I know, right? He's been all over the place.
That.
I haven't seen anything either. You know, he's a big LA guy, as we know. But he has been just unprompted talking about the effect of Alex Bregman, discussing swing decisions as the main driver of what he's noticing for wanting to improve for himself. He's talking about how Alex Bregman discusses certain scenarios, like, hey, if you're looking for a first pitch breaking ball, are you still swinging at it even if it looks good? Like stuff like that. And so Pete's describing the process as shifting because of bringing in a different player outside the organization. He gave John Malley his kudos. He gave Dustin Kelly his kudos in their process. But he does discuss the addition of the hitting philosophy that Bregman brings in that wasn't in the organization last year. So when I talk about clubhouse leadership, I'm more so, in my mind, thinking about the effect of other guys changing and adapting in their actual value output. So I'm very fascinated to see what Pete looks like in the first few weeks. If we see any different swing decisions, I'm also interested in seeing how that manifests in older guys who have been around the corner, like Dansby Swanson. He was talking about the effect of Alex Bregman on MLB Network. It's very fun to see someone have such a large impact. And it's not to pounce on Kyle Tucker. And I know some folks may interpret your words as a dig And it's not a dig. It's just the uniqueness of Alex Bregman. There's not many players in the league that demands the respect that Bregman gets because of the clubhouse culture. The guy started his own baseball facility in Arizona that other guys go and work out in. Like, he's a unique guy because he has that type of respect.
Well, and before you jump in on that, Jared, I do just want to say, you mentioned the foul territory interviews that the guys were doing. I love that Bregman said that Dansby is routinely reminding him that he was drafted number one ahead of him, that they won the national championship. I just love that. It's one of those things that they wondered when they were in the same clubhouse. And he was like, oh yeah, he's reminding me all the time that I went number one, you did not. Yeah.
I mean, for folks who don't know, so Bregman was number 2 at LSU, I believe, right? And then Dansby at Vandy, number 1. So the entire Cubs roster is just stacked with first-round draft picks. It's very fun to see.
I do want to, because I do want to make sure that as far as like Kyle Tucker goes, because you're right, it's not a dig on him at all. It's just purely a matter of like, certain guys are wired certain ways and have personalities that bring different attributes to a team. And it's just a difference in Kyle Tucker's personality versus, Alex Bregman's personality. And I know there was some stuff out there about Tucker and, during this offseason, and for all of the times that I saw him in that clubhouse last year, it didn't necessarily match up with what I observed. I'll just say that. So,
well, and that's what Michael Busch said as well.
He said the same thing. I was about to say that.
I always, things like that, I naturally question, but in that case, it definitely didn't line up with what I saw. He's a quieter guy. He has a very like understated personality, and that's who he is. And so, definitely not a knock on the guy. They're just different personalities.
Listen, you can acknowledge the truths, right? He was a softer spoken dude, didn't like the attention, the media attention. Bregman's, not to say he likes the media attention, but he's in the media. He does YouTube content for other guys. Like, he likes to talk about the sport. It's just a very different type of expression from Bregman. And frankly, that's the type of player I gravitate to. Love Kyle Tucker's home runs. I gravitate towards the baseball psychos. I like that intensity. That's why I like Nico Horner. That's why I like Dansby Swanson. Alex Bregman is those guys in even a more expressive way. So I, as a fan, I like that way more than Kyle Tucker. And I'm not even digging on Kyle Tucker. Definitely more questions for you. Just want to throw out there, next week, CHGO will be in Arizona from the 5th to the 8th. We have a lot going on. We got the Bulls guys out there. We got the Bears guys out there. I'm actually going to go. So I've been convinced I'm going to Arizona next week. There's an event Friday night. I got to tell you, it's at a bar near Paradise Valley. If you are not familiar with Arizona, let me tell you this. They are bouging it up. They're going to the most bougie part of Arizona for a Friday night dinner, 7 to 10 p.m. You can go and check it out. They also are going to Cubs games throughout the weekend, so stay tuned for that. You can go to allchgo.com, find tickets a la carte style to purchase whatever you want. But I will be there Friday night. Lance Briggs, I believe, will be there. So, if you want to meet Lance Briggs and, of course, myself, everyone wants to meet us two guys, right, Corey? Shaking your head over there.
In that order, yeah.
in that order, then, we'll be there. 2 former athletes, Lance Briggs and me, we'll be Friday night in Paradise Valley. So that will be fun.
All right. Back with Jared here. Brendan's, autograph session ad read there. But want to just ask you about the other guys you saw, and if you have more on Matthew Boyd too. But it was some solid names there on Thursday for the Cubs. We talked a little bit about Jackson Wiggins, and obviously it's a spring outing, etc. But just the pitching you saw today, anything stand out? I think that's always one of the main things. Again, I know you haven't, you just got there, but I'm always curious for those that are around the team every day, especially in the spring. who are the guys that are, we heard it last year with Brad Keller. Everyone was like, hey, you got to check out this bullpen. Like, we were getting these velo reads. Like, it was clear, even as a fan on the internet, like, people are looking at Brad Keller. Like, that's the name that's being talked about. So just anything like that's popping around, like, hey, not an obvious guy, but you got to check out what this guy's doing.
I think in Wiggins' case today, the most notable thing was just that, this was his first spring outing. He's facing major league hitters, for the first time in spring, one of which was Mike Trout, which, that's by itself,
okay.
That's a tall order. He's pretty good.
Did he get him out?
He gave up a double. So
Mike Trout? Well,
Mike Trout, yeah.
There's worse guys that give up doubles too.
Right. Like, raise your hand if you haven't given up a double to Mike Trout.
That's right.
But no, Wiggins came in the fourth, and it was back-to-back doubles to lead off the inning. And most of what I saw was like he was very fastball heavy, but the velocity was way up there. He's up 97, 98. So he was throwing hard, wasn't mixing in a whole lot of other stuff. He said he only threw his curveball once, because then he told us afterwards that he's still getting the feel for it a little bit, which is normal this time of year. And so I think what we saw today was a good example of guys where it doesn't matter how hard you throw. If you're just pounding the zone with a fastball and you're not really mixing in much else, major league hitters are going to get hits off of you. Because at the same time that he was giving up a lot of hits, he wasn't missing the zone very much. I don't think he walked anybody. I'd have to go back and check to verify that. But he had some strikeouts in there, didn't walk anybody. So when I saw that, I think this is a guy that as spring goes on, and he does get a feel for those breaking pitches. And, the double that he gave up to Trout was on a cutter. As he's working on some of that stuff, I think that there's some legit potential there. I don't know that he could be like a Brad Keller type just because, he's a rookie. But yeah, I like what I saw from him for the most part today. Somebody that I'm a little curious about and want to see some more of is Riley Martin, just because as a lefty, I think there's interesting potential there. But like I said, somebody that I'd like to get more of an eye on. Did get to see him a little bit today. But yeah, he's somebody that I've got my eye on.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Riley Martin, AAA guy the past 2 years. Last year, 2.69 ERA in AAA. Tons of strikeouts. So last year, 11 K per nine. The previous year, 13 K per nine. The problem with him is just the command of the walks. Last year, nearly a 5 walk per nine. Previous year, north of 6. So that's been holding him back. I asked the pitching coach last year, I'm like, show me who you like the most of all the Cubs guys at AAA. And number one on the list was actually Riley Martin. From a stuff perspective, just him trying to own in and actually making the pitches work for himself and not being all over the place.
And we've seen guys in the past where, sometimes they just stuff for days, but can't control it. And so that's going to be sort of the make or break thing for him, I think. But yeah, the loads of potential for high strikeout totals, and as a lefty, would be a tremendous add to that bullpen if you can get a handle on that stuff and not put so many guys on the bases.
Did you talk to Jackson at all? Were you able to get any words from him? So what's his personality type? You talked to Cade Horton, you talked to all the guys, right? Like, can you kind of paint the picture of who Jackson Wiggins is?
Well, I will say today was the first time I've ever spoken to him. So,
okay. And did you introduce yourself? My name is Jared Willis, and shake his hand?
I did. Yeah.
Oh, did you? Okay. Well, there you go.
And I but of course, what are the odds he's going to remember? But I always try to do that especially when I meet some of these guys for the first time. But he didn't. His answers were very short, which sometimes can be a product of a lot of things. A young guy who's not used to talking to media very much, but also sometimes it can be a product of somebody who's just like very, very focused on what he's doing, and like talking about it sometimes is like maybe not the way that he operates, or at least maybe not the way he operates in the aftermath of just having come off of the mound. Because that's kind of how he came across to me, was like, this is somebody who's now wants to have a chance to really look at what he's done, because he kept talking about like getting back to work the next day. Like, I'm going to go work on this, or now I want to focus on this, because he did talk about that curveball.
Was there anything in particular that he wants to work on that caught your attention, or is it more general?
He mentioned like specifically the curveball that he only threw once, and he said that that's something he still wants to keep working on, continuing to work on getting a feel for that. Because he said mostly like it was just good to get feedback from hitters and just see how they were responding to what he was throwing, and felt good about his fastball, but it's getting that breaking stuff in there. And I did ask him about like, hey, if you got your eye on the major league roster, what are you thinking? Do you want a starter, reliever? But he gave the very, I think, standard young player answer of like, I'll take whatever opportunity is there. But yeah, came across as somebody who's just very, very focused on his work.
So one last thing on Jackson Williams before we turn it over to you, Corey. When you talked to Cade Horton for the first time, was he also short in responses?
Yeah, he was.
Okay. And is he still short in responses? I mean, the clips I get seems to be rather long-winded in a good way.
Yeah, because that's where I think sometimes, like I said, you see that with young players fairly often when it's just not something that they're used to. And oftentimes with young players, it can go almost like either way. Like, they talk a lot because they're just, this is not something they've done before, and so they'll just talk and talk and talk to you. Or it's just the opposite, where they barely say much at all. And Horton at first was a little that way. And some of that too comes from, when you approach a player for the first time, they don't know who you are. They don't know what your deal is, what you're coming to them to ask about. So they can be a little guarded sometimes, which is why oftentimes I'll try to have just an informal chat with them where I'm not recording it. It's not an interview. Like, let's just talk about something, so that when I do come back to them at some point later, there's at least a little bit of that established. So that's something in Horton's case that I think the more he got to know some of us, I think there's some comfort there that now some of his responses you're seeing where he does feel more relaxed and comfortable about talking about what he's doing.
And it does make sense. I mean, Jared, of course, would never do this, but I can imagine if you're a younger player, you worry about saying the wrong thing, and now it's getting printed that you said you're, better than Paul Skeens and you can book it, type of thing. Like, I get that. It seems rather daunting if you've never done that before, and then you're expecting your quotes now to be in 6 different newspapers and podcasts and all these other things. Last couple of minutes here, Jared, what I wanted to ask is I feel like there's a lot of interesting stuff to focus on in this spring. There's a good number of players that, we talk about all the time. They're kind of going through their business. We know who they are. They're getting ready. They'll be ready. And we kind of know what to expect from them. But I think between, someone like Matt Shaw and his role and whether he can play the outfield, Brendan and I were talking before you jumped on about, depth at first base if it becomes necessary with a couple of these injuries. You've got some veteran outfielder options, guys like Dylan Carlson, Michael Conforto now in the mix that Brendan and I didn't even have a second to talk about. Chaz McCormick, guys trying to, make the team, but, are sit at least in some respect, established players at the MLB level to varying degrees, the pitching staff, et cetera, as you are arriving in Mesa and getting ready to interview and write and cover all of this. Is there one thing that has you most intrigued about this team? Like, this is what I'm really curious to see unfold in the next month or so before this team break camp?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is just how they are going to almost reassemble their bullpen, because they did lose, a few of those.
I'm not able to hear Jared. Brendan, can you?
I can hear Jared loud and clear. It's you and your microphone every month. We got to fix that microphone. Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, like I said, just who fills in some of those holes that are now in the bullpen because of we talked about Brad Keller a few minutes ago. the loss of some of those pitchers and just seeing who steps up and fills some of those spots, because there are some guys who with some exciting potential, but at the same time some real question marks. Like Daniel Palencia, for example, showed us that he's capable of being a very exciting closer, but the injury kind of cut that short. And so that's the first thing that I think I'm eager to see how that develops and plays out. But then, like you guys mentioned, the depth question at first base. I know there's talk of like Miguel Amaya possibly, working on spending some time there. Do you have somebody like Ballesteros attempt to do that?
Jared, we're going to go on overtime here. We're approaching an hour. We'll wrap. Were you saying about Amaya?
Yeah, just the first base, the backup first base question. Because I do think Busch has probably earned the right to get the vast majority of those starts, but there's going to be days when he's not the guy. So then they don't really, now that Tyler Austin is out for a significant amount of time, that does take away one of those options, I think. So I'm intrigued by the possibility of Miguel Amaya getting more starts because he's playing some first base. So.
Yeah, so am I. I mean, he looks great just from a batting practice perspective. I'm a big batting practice guy. I'll raise my hand. I'll admit that. But a lot of the changes we saw in post second half in 2024 seem to have carried over now for almost a year and a half. So it's encouraging to see specifically the stride. So if you're watching Miguel Amaya, you're wondering what is different. He kind of just picks up his toe. He puts it down. He does not have a stride. On the other hand, Shaw had a huge stride, which sometimes he tailors down. PCA's had a stride. He's had a toe tap. Amaya just picks his toe up. So that is the big change that I'll be continuing to watch. We are going to wrap it up here. We're over 1 hour. Appreciate you coming on, Jared. Sunscreen, SPF 30 at the minimum. People say go SPF 50 plus, but I do think, you've been in Chicago for a few months there, maybe a little pale, get some sunshine. SPF 30 is going to be great. I made the mistake years ago, like 10, 15 years ago. I forgot to put sunscreen on during the first February game. I was an idiot. I had tan lines for a year and a half. Worst sunburn in my entire life.
It sneaks up on you, especially you come here from Chicago, and it's like, you forget that it's February. It's so nice here. So I'm not prepared for this. So that's a good tip. I'll put some on tomorrow before I'm standing around at the backfields.
We'll see you guys all next week. Be sure to follow Jared. He has a lot of content coming up, talking to the coaches, players. Luke and the boys will be on throughout the next week. And then we're going to be in Arizona. So again, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, March 5th to 8th. Check out allchgo.com for more details. Corey and I will be back next week. He's looking blank right now because he can't hear me. Maybe I put him in timeout. Who knows? The world will never know. Thank you for listening. Talk to you next week. As always, go Cubs.
We all silly like the mayor.